I was home alone when the first alert came through. It was late. Probably past midnight. But I hadn't been paying much attention to the time. The hours had slipped away unnoticed, lost in the endless scroll of my phone. I was sprawled out on the couch, one leg hanging off the edge, mindlessly flicking my thumb up and down the screen. The house was silent. The kind of deep, pressing silence that makes you hyper-aware of your surroundings. Little things I usually ignored stood out. The faint creak of the wooden floor adjusting to the night. The distant hum of the refrigerator cycling on and off in the kitchen. The soft, steady ticking of the old wall clock. It all felt normal. Just another quiet night alone. Then, my phone screen flickered. Beep. 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 A harsh, piercing sound shattered the stillness, sharp and jarring, cutting through the quiet like a blade. My body jerked involuntarily, my fingers fumbling with the phone as I scrambled to turn down the volume. My heart stuttered for a second before pounding faster. It was one of those emergency alerts, the kind that usually popped up for thunderstorms or amber alerts. I almost dismissed it as nothing serious, just another routine warning. But something about this one felt different. I narrowed my eyes, scanning the message. Emergency alert, do not acknowledge the sound. Remain indoors. Lock all doors and windows. Do not respond to any noises you may hear. Wait for the all-clear message. I blinked. What? My brain stumbled over the words, trying to make sense of them. No mention of a storm. No missing child. No evacuation notice. Just this. A vague, unsettling command telling me not to react to something. My thumb hovered over the screen, hesitating. Maybe it was a glitch. A prank. Some kind of weird test message accidentally sent out. I glanced at the TV, hoping for some sort of explanation. Maybe breaking news, maybe an official report. But nothing. Just a rerun of an old sitcom, the laugh track playing as if everything in the world was perfectly fine. My stomach tightened. My pulse now a steady drum in my ears. Picked up speed. Then, I heard a knock. A soft, deliberate tap against the front door. I froze mid-breath. The phone was still in my hands, the glowing screen illuminating the warning. Do not acknowledge the sound. The words stared back at me, stark and unyielding, suddenly feeling more like a lifeline than a simple notification. My first instinct was to get up, check the peephole, maybe even crack the door open. What if it was a neighbor? What if someone needed help? But something deep inside me, something primal, kept me rooted in place. The alert replayed in my head, over and over like a warning I was only now beginning to grasp. Then, I heard a knock again. Louder this time. More forceful. I swallowed hard and gripped my knees, pulling them closer to my chest. It's just a coincidence. It has to be. Someone got the wrong house. They'll realize it and leave any second now. Then came the voice. Hello? Can you help me? A sharp inhale caught in my throat. My fingers curled tighter around my phone, knuckles turning pale. Something was wrong. The voice didn't sound right. The words were slow. Too slow. Careful and deliberate. Like someone trying to sound normal. Trying to sound human. But just missing the mark. Please, it said again. Let me in. A cold shiver crawled down my spine, spreading through my limbs like ice water. I clenched my jaw and curled deeper into myself, pressing my lips together, forcing my breathing to stay shallow, quiet. The emergency alert had told me exactly what to do. and I wasn't going to acknowledge it. I sat there, frozen in place. Every muscle in my body coiled tight with tension. The knocking stopped, after a while. My ears strained against the silence. Waiting. Listening for any sign that it was truly gone. My pulse was still hammering in my chest, each beat pounding against my ribs like a warning. But as the seconds dragged on, stretching into minutes, a tiny part of me, desperate for reassurance, began to believe that maybe, just maybe, it was over. Maybe whoever, or whatever, had been at my door had finally given up. Maybe they had gotten bored, realized no one was going to answer, and simply moved on. I almost let out a breath of relief. Almost. But then, the voice came again. But this time, it wasn't at the front door. It was at the back. "Hello?" The word was soft, almost a whisper, muffled through the glass, but it carried with it a weight of pure, skin-crawling wrongness. It shot through my chest like a bolt of ice, knocking the air from my lungs. My breath hitched sharply, and I clamped my lips shut, afraid that even the smallest sound would somehow give me away. My back door had thin curtains, enough to block out clear details, but still sheer enough to let in a sliver of moonlight. If I turned my head, if I even so much as glanced in that direction, I might see something. A shape. A shadow. A figure standing just beyond the glass. But I didn't want to see it. "I know you're in there," it continued. The words were drawn out slow and deliberate. Not a demand. Not a plea. Something else entirely. Like whoever was speaking wasn't just trying to get inside, they were enjoying this. My heart pounded so hard it physically hurt. I could feel it slamming against my ribs, each beat an unbearable drum in my chest. My body screamed at me to do something. To act, to move, but the warning on my phone flashed in my mind, firm and unyielding. Do not acknowledge the sound. I clenched my teeth and curled in on myself, gripping my knees so tightly that my fingernails dug into my skin. Then, tap. A single, deliberate tap against the glass. Ignore it. Just ignore it. Just ignore it. I repeated the words over and over in my head, mouthing them under my breath, barely even daring to exhale. If I followed the rules, if I just didn't react, maybe it would go away. Maybe this nightmare would end. Then the TV flickered. The room's dim glow shifted in an instant. The soft colors of the sitcom vanishing into a harsh crackling white. The screen buzzed. Distorted and erratic, flickering like an old VHS tape on fast forward. My stomach twisted into a painful knot. Then, before I could stop myself, my phone vibrated again. My fingers trembled as I lowered my gaze, unable to resist the pull. Emergency alert, do not acknowledge the sound. Do not communicate. Do not investigate. Do not attempt to leave. Await further instructions. A lump formed in my throat. My hands shook as I gripped the phone tighter, pressing my fingers into the edges like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some prank. This was real. Then, scrape. A long, slow drag against the glass. Like fingernails. Or claws. I bit down on my lips so hard I tasted blood. My entire body screamed at me to react, to move, to do something. Run upstairs, hide in a closet, grab a knife from the kitchen. Anything. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because the alert had been clear, do not acknowledge it. I didn't know if this thing could hear me. If it could sense me. But I wasn't about to find out. So I sat there rigid. My hands clenched into fists, my breathing slow and shallow. And the sound continued. Scrape. 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 Each drag was excruciatingly slow and deliberate, like it was making sure I knew it was still there. I don't know how long I sat there, trapped in that suffocating silence. Then, my phone vibrated again. Emergency alert, remain silent. Remain indoors. I gripped it so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My eyes burned, and it wasn't until I blinked that I realized I had been holding back tears. This was happening. This was really happening. This wasn't some social experiment or government test. Something was out there. And then, it spoke again. But this time, it used my name. Jason. A violent shiver shot down my spine. I know you can hear me. Jason? It said. My entire body locked up with fear. My muscles ached from how stiffly I was holding myself still. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms, my breathing shallow and controlled. It wasn't possible. No one had been inside my house. I hadn't spoken to anyone. There was no way. No way, this thing should have known my name. Then it chuckled. A slow drawn-out sound, like someone stretching out a laugh just to watch the discomfort grow. My stomach twisted. Nausea creeping up my throat. You're being so good. It whispered. But how long can you last? A fresh wave of cold terror washed over me. I pressed my hands over my ears, trying to block it out, trying to pretend I hadn't heard it. I didn't want to hear this. I didn't want to know what would happen if I didn't obey the alert. The noises didn't stop. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, each second dragging out in unbearable silence, punctuated only by the sounds outside. Whatever it wasn't leaving. It didn't have a rhythm or a pattern, nothing predictable that I could brace myself for. It would knock. Softly at first, almost polite, then go silent as if waiting. Waiting for me to react. Then the scratching would start. A slow, deliberate scrape against the wood. Sometimes near the bottom of the door. Sometimes higher, near the lock. Other times, it sounded like it was trailing along the walls, as if searching, testing, feeling for a way inside. The randomness made it worse. I never knew when or where the next sound would come from. My hands gripped my knees so tightly they ached. My breath shallow and quiet. Then came the whispers. Low, croaking noises, slipping through the cracks in the doors and windows. Not words. Not really. Just a jumble of wet, garbled sounds. Thick and heavy. Like something trying to speak through a throat that wasn't made for it. When the first time I heard it, a wave of nausea rolled through me. It was wrong, like a radio signal half-tuned, warping and twisting into something unnatural. The longer I listened, the worse it got. It was like I was hearing something I wasn't supposed to. Something ancient. Something outside of anything human. The sound scraped against my brain, filling my head with an unshakable dread, like I was on the verge of understanding something I really shouldn't. And then came the worst noise yet. The front door handle jiggled. My entire body locked up. Every muscle seized, every nerve screamed in warning. I hadn't locked it. A fresh wave of horror crashed over me. My mind racing so fast it barely felt like I was thinking at all. Oh my God. How could I have been so stupid? How could I have sat here, frozen, too terrified to move, too focused on the alerts and the knocking and the whispers, To even think about locking the damn door. If it had tried sooner. If it had just turned the handle and walked right in. But it didn't. Because somehow, the door was locked now. I stared at it, my breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts. My heart slammed against my ribs, my pulse a frenzied drumbeat in my ears. Who locked it? Had the emergency alert system locked it remotely? Did my house have some hidden security feature I didn't know about? Or, had something else locked me inside? I didn't know which answer was worse. The handle stopped moving. For one awful suffocating moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, bang. A single, heavy pound against the door. So forceful I felt it vibrate through the floor beneath me. I bit down hard on my knuckles to keep from screaming. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes. I didn't want to do this anymore. I didn't want to be here, trapped in this endless, suffocating night. I wanted to close my eyes, wake up to the morning sun streaming through my windows, and realize this was just a nightmare. But the darkness stretched on. The silence thickened. And I sat there, trapped inside it. At some point, exhaustion won. I don't remember falling asleep. Not really. It wasn't restful, not even close. It was the kind of sleep that didn't feel like sleep at all. Just my brain shutting down, giving up under the crushing weight of fear and exhaustion. I drifted in and out, my body stiff, my limbs heavy, my mind slipping between fragments of reality and the horrible, lingering fear that I wasn't actually asleep, that at any moment, I would hear another knock. Another whisper. Then, a buzz. My phone vibrated violently in my hands, the sharp motion shocking me awake. I sat up too fast, my neck stiff, my body aching from hours of tension. My hands fumbled for the screen, my vision still blurry from half-sleep. Emergency alert, all clear. You may resume normal activities. I didn't move at first. I just stared at the words, my brain struggling to process them. All clear. Did that mean it was really over? That whatever had been outside was gone? I swallowed, my throat dry and raw. Slowly. So slowly, I uncurled my stiff legs and forced myself to stand. My entire body ached, muscles protesting every movement after being locked in place for so long. My legs felt unsteady, almost numb, as I took a hesitant step forward. Then another. I needed to see for myself. I crept toward the window, each movement deliberate and careful. Like the floor itself might betray me. My heartbeat roared in my ears as I reached out, barely lifting the curtain. The houses, the sidewalks, the road, everything looked exactly the same as before. No sign of anything strange. No proof that any of it had actually happened. For the first time in what felt like forever, I exhaled. It's over. I let the curtain fall back into place. My body sagged, a deep, shaking relief settling into my bones. I almost laughed, just from the sheer weight of the fear lifting. It felt ridiculous now. I had spent the whole night paralyzed in terror over what? Nothing. No damage. No broken windows. No evidence of anything unnatural. But then, just as I turned away from the window, my eyes caught something. Something small. Something that made my stomach twist painfully, sending a wave of ice through my veins. Footprints. Right outside my front door. Not shoe prints. Not human. They were long. Thin. Wrong. And they led away from my house. I swallowed hard, my breath hitching. My skin crawled with an unbearable, suffocating dread. I didn't want to look at them anymore. I didn't want to think about what kind of thing could have left them there. I don't know what visited me that night. I don't know how long it had been out there, or how many people it had tricked before. But I do know one thing. I obeyed the alert. And that's the only reason I'm still here.